Welcome to my channel. I'm Sacha. I'm a television journalist originally from the UK, and now I'm working on the news in Australia. Hi guys, welcome to the channel. So on this video I'm going to be talking about the explosive interview with Oprah, my thoughts on the interview itself, and some of the behind the scenes stuff that I've noticed while watching the interview. I was like, what? Oh, it still jars with me, and why do we always vilify women? First off, I think there was a sense of transparency which they tried to establish right at the beginning by saying that there was no salary offered for this interview, and also by saying that the questions Meghan and Harry had not seen before the interview itself. So I thought that was a really interesting way for them trying to already remove people's preconceptions, because remember, this interview, we knew that it was going to be aired weeks before it actually aired, so there's been a lot of time and momentum for people to be able to speculate what would be in it, how much preparation has gone into it, the fact that it could be scripted. So it's interesting that they set off on that foot. That actually surprised me, to be honest, because I would have imagined, or at least my preconceptions were, that there were a lot of comms around this before the interview itself. I would have imagined that a lot of it would have been pre-planned and prepared prior to the interview itself. That's a lot of P's. So yeah, I still think that Meghan's team would have had an idea of what would have been asked, I'd imagine, and Oprah and her team would have sat down for, you know, a fair few hours. It is a huge scoop to get this interview, so they would have gone in so prepared. They would have known exactly the angles that they were going for with absolutely everything. And next, what about how Oprah did the interview itself? Overall, I thought that Oprah did actually an incredible job, and I say actually because I wasn't necessarily expecting her to push Meghan on some of the questions, Meghan and Harry on some of the questions that she did push them on. I wasn't expecting her to give them an easy ride, but she really, I thought, did an excellent job. To begin with, in the first probably half an hour, she had, it looked like an iPad or a notebook or something in her hands, and I was wondering whether there would have been a team who would have been, you know, live reacting to it and being like, ask this, ask that. But no, let's be honest, it's Oprah. She would have been there in the interview. She would have been asking the questions herself.
So were you thinking of harming yourself? Were you having suicidal thoughts?
Yes.
In the news, if you're doing an interview like this during a news show, you have a news editor in the gallery who's like, push them on a specific angle, because it's really good to get more perspectives when you're doing an interview, because sometimes you can miss things or whatever. But she really didn't. She pushed on the things that she needed to. There was one thing I think that she should have asked, which I don't think she did, and that was what they were hoping to get from the interview itself. I don't really think that wasn't explicit, although obviously you can read between the lines and see why they did it. I do, however, think that some of Oprah's questions to Harry weren't as empathetic as they needed to be. I just felt she didn't really get the gist of what he was saying when he was like, well, because it's the royal family, you know. I feel like she gave Harry a harder time than she gave Meghan, to be honest with you, which I thought was interesting. However, overall, actually it was an excellent interview, and, you know, I think it's something that it'll be one of those interviews that'll probably be a defining interview of her career. People will be talking about this for years, decades to come. The editing of the actual interview itself was really interesting. I heard that there was originally a 1.5 hour version, and then what we got to see was the 2-hour version. I think that having a longer form interview allowed them to leave in certain edits which you wouldn't normally see, especially in a news interview. So you could see the really long pauses on Harry and Meghan's faces, even the reactions of Oprah.
What?
A lot of time in TV, that's wasted airtime because nothing is being said, but so much is being said in those moments. So I'm not surprised that they left them in. I'm in fact very glad that they did, because I think you can read a lot about the body language and how considered they were all trying to be in terms of what they were saying in the interview itself. Also, I think it's worth touching on the camera angles that there were, which allow for the editing itself. I would love to know how long the actual interview was overall versus the edit that we actually saw, because I mean, from what I can see, there's at least 4 camera angles in there. So you've got the moving camera angle, which was really nice. Then you've got the one focused on Oprah, the one focused on Meghan.
I was really ashamed to say it at the time.
And then you've got the one focused on Harry.
Before he stopped taking my calls.
And then there was another one actually towards the end, which was on Meghan, but on the back of her. So like she's here and the camera was here instead of here. So that was really interesting actually. It's called a 2-shot if it's 2 cameras, a 3-shot if it's 3 cameras, etc. The reason you do that is because it allows you to edit easily between the two. So if you want to cut a bit of what someone has said, you just go to the reaction of the other person and then you come back to the other person. You can't see the edit because it just looks like it's going to the other person. So there were a few small edits that I did see in there that I could definitely pick up on. There of course would have been more, but I would be really interested to know how long the actual interview ran for itself and to find out. I'd love to know what they cut, which I know they will be airing. Okay, the big one, how did Meghan come across? Well, I think that if anyone watches this interview and doesn't have empathy for her, then what is wrong with that person? I think there are a few things that she said which I was like, what?
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
The things that she said about feeling suicidal, the fact that she didn't leave the house for more than 2 times in 4 months, the fact that her keys and her passport were removed from her and essentially her freedom was removed from her, that's heartbreaking to watch. And I think it really gives you an insight into the way the royal family runs and the sense that they do not have freedom. It was exactly what Harry said later in the interview about them all being trapped, so it was extremely interesting. But then sometimes she said things which I was shocked at. For example, not knowing that you need to courtesy in front of the Queen. To me, that's a very obvious thing. However, I guess it goes along with the narrative that she was saying in that interview that she really didn't know a lot about the royal family before she entered into it, which was, you know, part of the problem itself. I also think that there is a massive cultural difference there as well. Obviously, she is American, Harry is British. British have this kind of stiff upper lip reticence that I think Americans have the exact opposite of. You know, the lines that she said about the fairy tale and it being better than a fairy tale and things like that were, to me, a little bit cringy, but also, you know what, good for Meghan if that's what they feel like. I think that's great. I really liked the fact that Harry touched on how tough COVID has been for so many people, and I think it was really important for him to acknowledge that, because there's no denying that it's been a really awful time for the entire world, and I think it goes a long way to show that bit of empathy for all the people who have been affected by COVID, people who've lost their jobs, who've lost family members. Because to some people who'll be watching this, they'll just be like, you're royal, you're rich, why do we even care? So, not that I think that, but I think that there will be people who watch it and do think that. One of the things that Meghan perhaps shouldn't have spoken about was the whole thing with Kate. The reason is that the royal family don't have a right to reply. Like, that was exactly what they were saying. They were, in many ways, trapped when they were in the royal family itself. They couldn't come out and say this happened and set the record straight, which is what they did in this interview, fair enough. But now Kate doesn't have the opportunity to do that, and I think that even though Meghan in some ways backtracked and said, you know, she sent me flowers, I don't really want to go into it, it's her still acknowledging that Kate made her cry, I think is a road I personally would not have gone down. However, she was in an interview situation where no cards were off the table, so I guess that was her reaction to it, but it still jars with me, and I just think, don't say that about Kate. But, you know, she was responding to a question that Oprah asked, and I guess it's very difficult when claims have been made about you, i.e. her making Kate cry, to not actually set the record straight in that moment, even though it might not be flattering for Kate, and even though she might not have the right to reply. So I can see why in the moment she answered that question and why she said that. However, I think that people are just going to remember from that interview that Kate made Meghan cry, and I don't know if that's a good thing because, as I said, the royals do not have a right to reply. Next, how did Harry come across? Well, you know what, I thought it was extremely interesting when he joined the interview itself. I thought that obviously he'd been watching on the sidelines, and the format of the interview was interesting. They had Oprah, Meghan one-on-one, then they had Oprah, Meghan and Harry, and they obviously had so much to say. They were almost talking over each other. I guess it makes complete sense, you know, they've been silenced, one of those big lines in the interview, for so long that now they've had the opportunity to speak up, so they had so much to say. I definitely felt that when Harry joined the interview itself, he had just come off the sidelines and was a bit shell-shocked at what had already come out and was thinking, oh, that was me reading between the lines and reading his body language. However, his interview itself I thought was extremely interesting. I think it was kind of funny to compare the difference between Meghan and Harry because they're both articulate people, right? They're obviously both extremely intelligent. However, I'm British, so perhaps I'm biased, but to me, he just got to the point. If he was going to say something, he just said it.
I went to all the places which I thought I should go to ask for help.
I felt like Meghan danced around to the issue a tiny bit more. Oprah pushed Harry on the question about who it was that asked how dark Archie's skin would be. And I thought it was really interesting that he was like, I will never ever say that, and I'm not comfortable saying that. And I thought, kind of good for you, because at the end of the day it is still his family, and it would be extremely damaging. And also, his son Archie doesn't need to grow up and know that his uncle or his grandfather or whoever it was has asked this question. He doesn't need to grow up and know that. So I actually really respected Harry for holding back and not answering that question. The next big question, should they have done the interview when they want privacy? Well, there is an extreme difference between being hounded by the tabloids and a narrative being written about you, which it transpires is not true, what a surprise, versus you doing an interview where you decide what you say and where you're doing it with an interviewer who is well trusted. They are absolutely worlds apart, these two things. So the line that a lot of people are coming out with saying, well, why do they want to do the interview if they move there to have privacy and everything like that? Because they are now controlling the narrative. That's exactly the biggest point that came out of the interview. They were silenced, and now they're controlling the narrative. Now they're not trapped by the royal family, so they can be honest and say, you know, all this stuff that was misconstrued by the world because the tabloids and other people put this out there, well, you know what, it's not true. And I think absolutely great for them for doing that, because that was probably what they wanted to achieve in the interview, which was my point earlier that I don't think it was 100% explicit, but that's obviously what they wanted to achieve. The reason I said it wasn't explicit is because I would have liked to have heard Meghan and Harry actually say that, but 2 and 2 equals 4. Other things that I'll take from the interview are, of course, I'm so saddened by the fact that Meghan got so low that she, you know, felt like she wanted to harm herself. That's absolutely horrific. Like, how can people not empathise with that? And 2, I felt so sad that Harry felt that history was repeating itself. Can you imagine losing your mother in these circumstances and then seeing your wife go through the same thing 30 years later? Like, what is wrong with the world? Seriously? One of my favourite authors, Haig, actually put something out yesterday which I thought would be really interesting to include, and he said, already people are saying she is lying for attention. She is not lying. I actually know this. As for attention, she already has it. She is the most trolled figure in the entire world. And for what? For being a person with the tenacity to be her actual non-offensive self, i.e. to just be breathing. Tell your truth, tell it your way, tell it even when people don't want to hear it. The only thing people can never take from you is your own reality. I was just so interested by that. He also said the racists and monarchists and misogynists will keep spewing their bile, but she has freed herself. She is an inspiration to everyone who has ever been bullied, and the bullies are furious. Their bullying didn't win. When someone tells you that they are suicidal, there is only one rule: believe them. The way that he wrote that, I was like, yes, well done, Matt Haig, well done. As for the press in the UK, I believe that they will vilify her for this regardless. I think that they've taken such a disliking to her that even though she has literally said that she was suicidal, in large parts because of them, right, they're still going to continue the barrage of abuse against her. And I think that's disgusting. I think that there needs to be some kind of governing body or something in place to stop papers like this from putting things out that are essentially bullying. And I'm someone who is a journalist. I work in the media. However, there's a difference between what I do, which is reporting on local news items, versus putting out stories about a royal member when you know they don't have the right to reply, which now she does, so good for her. And I think another massive thing that I've taken from this is that the institution of the royal family failed her in this situation. I think it failed Diana, it didn't defend her. And I think one of the biggest things that we need to look at here is the fact that, why do we always vilify women? Why are Kate and Meghan put against each other? Can we not just be happy for them and let them live their lives? So there you have it, guys. That's my take on the interview with Oprah, Harry and Meghan. I think it's going to be an interview that will define the conversation for a very long time. Kudos to Meghan and Harry for speaking out, and I think that Buckingham Palace will absolutely be forced to react to this when claims of racism have been made. I think there is no way you can be silent during a claim like that. Absolutely no way. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you subscribe. I'm fairly new to YouTube. I'm growing this channel, so it would mean the world to me if you join me on this journey. And thank you so much to my most recent subscribers for joining me. You're one of the OGs right from the beginning, and it means the absolute world. So take care, guys, and I will see you next video.